Let's be brutally honest. Anyone who thinks America can afford to bully India today is living in the past. The rules of the game have changed, the stakes are higher than ever, and one wrong move could cost the United States its influence, its markets, and its credibility on the global stage. This isn't just politics, it's strategy, plain and simple. When discussing why Trump cannot afford to take a hard line on India, the most pressing reason is the geopolitical reality shaping today's world order. Over the past decade, the United States has shifted its strategic lens toward the Indo-Pacific, a region that has become the focal point of economic growth, security challenges, and great power competition. At the heart of this lies China's rapid ascent. Beijing's aggressive expansion in the South China Sea, its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, and its efforts to build political and military influence across Asia, Africa, and beyond present Washington with its most serious challenge since the Cold War. In this equation, India stands as a natural counterweight to China. With its massive population, growing economic clout, and shared democratic values with the US, India is not simply another partner, it is a pivotal actor that can either stabilize or destabilize the balance of power in Asia. For Trump, adopting a hostile stance toward India would mean undercutting America's own Indo-Pacific strategy at a time when China's reach is stretching further than ever before. India's geography alone makes it indispensable. Sitting at the crossroads of the Indian Ocean, it commands access to vital sea lanes through which much of the world's trade flows. The United States Navy cannot unilaterally secure these waters forever, and working closely with India is essential to ensure free and open shipping routes. Moreover, India has invested heavily in modernizing its navy and increasing its regional presence, complementing America's own strategic goals in the region. For Washington, a strained relationship with New Delhi would not just weaken its ability to contain Chinese influence, but would also reduce its credibility with other Asian partners who look to the US for leadership in maintaining regional balance. Trump, therefore, must tread carefully. His administration has already leaned into the concept of the Quad, a security dialogue involving the United States, India, Japan, and Australia, which aims to promote stability in the Indo-Pacific. If Trump were to antagonize India, he would risk unraveling years of diplomatic effort that positions America as the leading architect of regional security. Equally important is the perception of global leadership. The United States needs allies who are not just aligned economically, but also capable of shouldering responsibilities in security matters. India fits that description better than most. Unlike some American allies who are hesitant to spend more on defense or reluctant to take tough stances against China, India has shown increasing willingness to engage in joint exercises, share intelligence, and commit to building deterrence. This makes India a partner Washington cannot afford to alienate. Furthermore, in a multipolar world where Russia, China, and even smaller states are testing US dominance, ensuring that India remains firmly within the orbit of American influence is critical. Any harsh approach by Trump that jeopardizes this alignment could inadvertently drive India closer to other powers, especially Russia, with whom India already has long-standing defense ties. That would represent a strategic setback for the United States, one Trump knows he cannot afford at a time when American foreign policy requires steady alliances more than ever. Another reason Trump cannot afford to be tough on India is the changing dynamics of global trade and the growing importance of the Indian economy to the United States. For decades, Washington's trade focus has revolved around traditional partners in Europe and East Asia, but in recent years India has emerged as one of the fastest-growing major economies in the world. With a population surpassing 1.4 billion and a rapidly expanding middle class, India represents an enormous consumer market that American companies cannot ignore. From cars to smartphones to agricultural products, the potential demand in India is unmatched by many other countries. For Trump, who prides himself on being a businessman president and who consistently emphasizes trade surpluses and American exports, alienating such a massive and promising market would run contrary to his stated economic goals. Any tough trade stance that disrupts U.S. access to Indian markets risks closing the door on billions of dollars in potential revenue for American firms. India's role in global supply chains further amplifies this point. As tensions between Washington and Beijing have intensified, many American companies have begun diversifying their manufacturing bases away from China. India has positioned itself as a viable alternative, offering not only a large workforce, but also a government eager to attract investment through reforms and incentives. Companies such as Apple, Tesla, and other major US multinationals are already exploring large-scale investments in India, seeing it as both a production hub and a consumer market. If Trump were to impose punitive tariffs or take a combative trade approach, he would undercut this shift and undermine America's broader strategy of reducing overdependence on China. For an administration that has consistently championed bringing manufacturing closer to friendly and reliable partners, taking a hard line on India would contradict its own economic and geopolitical priorities. The agricultural sector is another area where American interests are intertwined with India's market potential. The United States exports a significant amount of farm goods, including nuts, fruits, and grains, and India's growing middle class has created increasing demand for high-quality food products. For Trump, whose political base includes many farmers and agricultural producers, ensuring strong trade ties with India is not just a matter of foreign policy, but also of domestic political importance. A trade war or overly tough stance could lead to retaliatory measures from New Delhi, shutting out American farmers from one of the fastest expanding food markets in the world. That would create economic pain at home and potentially cost Trump politically in rural states. Furthermore, American service industries, particularly technology and financial services, see India as a key frontier. The digital economy in India is expanding at a breathtaking pace, with hundreds of millions of people coming online in the last decade. US tech giants such as Google, Amazon, and Microsoft have invested heavily to capture this growth, creating a strong stake in maintaining positive trade relations. If Washington were to escalate trade disputes, it would not only threaten these investments, but also create space for competitors from Europe or even China to gain greater influence in India's booming digital sector. For Trump, who values America's corporate success and its ability to dominate global markets, being overly aggressive toward India would jeopardize a unique opportunity to secure long-term economic advantage. Technology and investment form one of the strongest pillars of the modern US-India relationship, and this is a domain where Trump cannot afford to appear hostile. Over the last decade, India has become an indispensable player in the global technology ecosystem, not only as a consumer of digital services, but also as a provider of skilled labor and innovation. With a population that is overwhelmingly young and increasingly connected to the internet, India has become the fastest-growing digital market in the world. American technology companies have recognized this potential and poured billions of dollars into the country to secure their place in its rapidly expanding digital economy. For Trump, whose political narrative has consistently emphasized boosting American companies abroad, alienating India risks undermining the massive investments US firms have already made in one of the most promising technology markets of the century. The scale of these investments is enormous. Google has announced multi-billion-dollar funding packages to expand its services in India. Microsoft has deepened its presence through cloud computing initiatives, and Amazon has committed billions to build out e-commerce and logistics networks across the country. Even social media platforms like Facebook and its subsidiary WhatsApp rely heavily on India, where they have the largest user base in the world. These companies are not just betting on India's current market, but on its long-term growth as hundreds of millions more people come online in the coming decade. For Trump, taking a hardline stance that destabilizes this relationship would send shockwaves through America's biggest corporations, many of which form powerful lobbying groups with significant political influence in Washington. It would amount to creating unnecessary friction with the very companies that drive US innovation and hold tremendous sway over the American economy. In addition to being a market for American tech giants, India also plays a crucial role in the supply of skilled labor that supports US technology development. From Silicon Valley startups to multinational giants, Indian engineers, programmers, and entrepreneurs have become an integral part of the American innovation story. India's deep pool of STEM talent is not only building technology at home, but also fueling the American tech industry abroad. Restricting trade or investment flows with India could create ripple effects that harm America's ability to maintain its competitive edge in the global technology race. For Trump, who has spoken repeatedly about the importance of keeping America ahead in innovation, cutting off cooperation with one of the world's largest technology talent hubs would run counter to his broader strategic goals. Furthermore, India's government has made technology and digitalization a centerpiece of its economic vision, introducing policies to expand internet access, encourage digital payments, and attract global investment. This aligns directly with the interests of American companies looking for growth beyond saturated Western markets. At the same time, US venture capital firms have increasingly turned to India as a priority destination for investment, with billions flowing into Indian startups across sectors like fintech, e-commerce, and renewable energy. By adopting a confrontational stance, Trump would not only jeopardize the progress of these ventures, but also push India toward closer partnerships with competitors such as China, South Korea, or European investors eager to fill the void. Defense partnerships represent one of the most critical and strategically sensitive aspects of the US-India relationship, and this is another area where Trump cannot afford to adopt a confrontational approach. Over the past decade, India has emerged as a major defense partner for the United States, driven by both shared security concerns and complementary military capabilities. With China expanding its influence across the Indo-Pacific and modernizing its armed forces at a rapid pace, India's strategic position has become increasingly important. The United States has sought to deepen cooperation through arms sales, joint exercises, and intelligence sharing. From multi-billion-dollar aircraft deals to advanced missile defense systems, these partnerships are not symbolic. They represent tangible tools of influence, ensuring that India can act as a stabilizing force in the region. For Trump, taking a hardline stance would risk eroding years of trust and could slow the progress of these highly strategic collaborations, undermining US objectives in Asia. The scale and depth of these defense ties have grown considerably in recent years. India has purchased sophisticated fighter jets, naval vessels, and surveillance equipment from the United States, signaling a shift from being a passive recipient to a proactive partner in regional security. Beyond sales, the US and India conduct regular joint military exercises, ranging from maritime drills in the Indian Ocean to land-based operations designed to improve interoperability. These exercises are not merely symbolic shows of strength. They are essential for preparing both militaries to respond effectively to crises, including natural disasters, regional conflicts, or maritime confrontations. If Trump were to adopt a tough, confrontational posture, it could jeopardize these exercises and create friction at a moment when strategic coordination is increasingly necessary to counter shared threats. India's role in US defense strategy is also closely tied to broader multilateral efforts. The United States has invested in frameworks such as the Quad, which includes India, Japan, and Australia, to maintain a rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific. For these partnerships to be effective, India must remain engaged and willing to collaborate on a long-term basis. Aggressive rhetoric or punitive measures from Washington could signal unreliability as a partner, prompting India to reconsider its alignment or slow down commitments. This would not only weaken the Quad, but also send an alarming message to other regional allies about America's consistency in defense matters. In this context, a cooperative, rather than confrontational, approach toward India is not just preferable, it is essential to preserve US influence and credibility in the region. Another key factor is the technological dimension of defense cooperation. The US has provided India with access to advanced military technologies, from surveillance drones to satellite systems, as part of a broader effort to enhance India's self-reliance in defense production. These technology transfers come with trust, shared protocols, and the expectation of long-term strategic alignment. Confronting India aggressively could stall these programs, undermine confidence, and allow rival powers to step in. For Trump, who has consistently emphasized American strength and global influence, maintaining strong defense partnerships with India is a strategic imperative that cannot be sacrificed for short-term political or trade considerations. Global leadership optics form a crucial element in understanding why Trump cannot afford to be tough on India, especially in a world where perceptions of influence and credibility matter as much as military or economic power. The United States has long positioned itself as the leader of the free world, championing a rules-based international order while maintaining alliances across multiple continents. India, with its democratic governance, strategic location, and growing economic influence, plays a central role in reinforcing America's global stature. Any perception that the US is antagonistic toward India risks undermining that image, signaling to the world that Washington is selective or inconsistent in its alliances. In the era of instantaneous global communication where actions and statements are scrutinized in real time, even small diplomatic missteps can have far-reaching consequences. For Trump, a confrontational stance would not only strain bilateral ties, but could also damage America's credibility as a reliable partner in the eyes of other nations watching the Indo-Pacific closely. India's position as an emerging global power amplifies these optics. With a population exceeding 1.4 billion, a rapidly growing economy, and increasing participation in international forums, India is no longer a regional player, it is a global one. Its influence extends into climate policy, international trade negotiations, technology regulation, and multilateral security initiatives. For the United States, portraying India as a partner rather than an adversary is essential to demonstrating leadership in these global arenas. Conversely, adopting a tough stance risks creating an image of US unilateralism or coercion, which could push India toward partnerships with countries that Washington might prefer to see as strategic competitors. In a multipolar world where influence is constantly contested, these optics are not trivial. They directly affect the ability of the US to shape international norms and build coalitions around its strategic priorities. Furthermore, India's growing voice in global governance underscores why maintaining positive optics is strategically necessary. As one of the largest contributors to United Nations peacekeeping missions, and an increasingly active participant in World Trade Organization discussions, India has a presence on the international stage that cannot be ignored. If Washington were to act aggressively or impose punitive measures, it would risk alienating a country that is otherwise aligned with American interests on key global issues. This could create openings for competitors to step in, altering the balance of influence in forums that are critical to the US. For Trump, who has emphasized America's global standing and influence, being seen as hostile to India would contradict that narrative and weaken America's ability to lead on issues ranging from regional security to climate action. Finally, the optics extend beyond formal diplomatic channels. Media coverage, international commentary, and the perception of US consistency all play into how American leadership is viewed. By maintaining a cooperative, constructive posture toward India, the The US reinforces its image as a pragmatic and strategic power capable of balancing tough choices with long-term alliances. Any deviation toward hostility risks portraying the United States as unpredictable or transactional in ways that could erode trust among other partners. In today's interconnected world, where reputation and reliability are as influential as military or economic might, the visual and symbolic aspects of global leadership are inseparable from real policy, making a harsh approach toward India an unnecessary and counterproductive risk. The Indian-American community represents a significant factor in US domestic politics, and this makes it an area where Trump cannot afford to be overtly tough on India. Over the last few decades, Indian Americans have emerged as one of the most educated, affluent, and politically active immigrant communities in the United States. They are concentrated in key swing states, including Florida, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, where electoral outcomes are often decided by narrow margins. Their voting patterns are increasingly influential, and their engagement in political campaigns, fundraising, and public policy debates gives them an outsized voice relative to their population size. For any American leader, disregarding the perspectives of this community or adopting policies perceived as hostile toward India carries real political risk, particularly in competitive election cycles where every vote matters. The economic and professional profile of Indian Americans amplifies their influence. Many occupy high-level positions in technology, finance, healthcare, and academia, creating networks that intersect with both policy and business. Their opinions are often sought on international trade, immigration, and technology policy, giving them leverage beyond traditional voting influence. When policies toward India are perceived as punitive or aggressive, it can mobilize this community to lobby against the administration's agenda or amplify criticism through media and social platforms. In an era where public perception and community engagement can sway not only local but national narratives, a confrontational approach risks alienating a politically sophisticated and highly connected constituency. For Trump, who has previously emphasized courting key voter blocs in swing states, this is not a minor consideration. It is a strategic necessity to ensure continued support in critical areas. Beyond voting and lobbying, Indian Americans play a role in shaping bilateral economic and educational linkages. Many are business leaders who maintain investments and operations bridging the United States and India. Their influence extends to facilitating trade, technology partnerships, and cultural exchanges, meaning that policies perceived as hostile can have ripple effects through private sector networks. Aggressive stances toward India could therefore discourage investment, disrupt collaboration, and signal instability in relationships that are vital to both nations' growth. For a US administration focused on economic expansion and global competitiveness, maintaining a positive rapport with this influential diaspora is not just politically expedient, it is economically prudent. The community's impact is also amplified by media and social engagement. Indian Americans are active in both traditional and digital media, providing commentary, analysis, and coverage on issues affecting US-India relations. Their voices are increasingly influential in shaping public opinion, particularly in urban centers and among younger, educated voters. A policy perceived as unfair or adversarial toward India can therefore trigger a cascade of criticism, influencing not only domestic political calculations, but also international perceptions of American leadership. For Trump, who thrives on public opinion and media narratives, ignoring these optics would be strategically unwise. Finally, Indian Americans often act as informal diplomats, facilitating understanding and dialogue between the United States and India. They participate in cultural, business, and policy initiatives that reinforce bilateral ties and create goodwill. Hostile or aggressive policies toward India risk undermining these grassroots and professional efforts, weakening one of the strongest soft power channels available to the US administration. This makes the diaspora not just a political consideration, but a strategic one, highlighting the interconnectedness of domestic politics, international relations, and global influence. So when you strip it all down, the message is clear. Trump cannot afford to be tough on India anymore because it isn't just about trade, defense, or politics. It's about America's global strategy, economic future, and credibility. India is a partner that Washington cannot afford to alienate, whether in technology, security, or international influence. Being confrontational would be reckless, short-sighted, and strategically counterproductive. In today's world, strength doesn't come from aggression. It comes from smart alliances, calculated cooperation, and knowing when to pick your battles. And on India, the choice is obvious. Toughness is a luxury America simply cannot afford.